So for FIFO, did we sell at least 75 units? Anyone? I'm gonna unmute you all.
That's from the beginning.
We did, right?
Yeah, we absolutely sold at least 75 units because we know that we sold a total of 318. So we're gonna expense that entire layer, 75 units, at its cost basis of $16 per unit, right? So remember that over here, we're figuring out total cost by taking A times B, right? Number of units times the cost per unit. So we're going to expense a total cost of $1,200 for that first layer. Once you expense it as cost of goods sold, that means it's no longer going to be listed in the inventory listing. For FIFO, you're going to go in exactly the order. We expensed all of the beginning inventory. Now we're going to go to March 3rd. And you're going to use your calculator and do a little calculation. What's 75 units plus 95 units?
170.
170. So did we sell at least 170 units?
Yes.
Yes, we sold 318. So the reason I did that was just to check if we're going to expense the entire next layer. So March 3rd, we're going to expense all of this layer. So all 95 units. And those units had a cost basis of $18 per unit. And $1,710 is expensed.
Hey, Earl, did you get your prescription yet? No.
Okay.
Hey, grandpa.
I don't know who that is. Thank you. So we've expensed 170 units so far, right? How many do we have left? This is what I'm doing over off to the side. So 318 units were sold, right?
201.
And we're going to subtract 170 units, which we've expensed so far, and back into how many units we have left to expense.
148.
201.
So I want the same number from two people.
148.
148. So 318 units sold total minus 170 units expense gives us 148 units left to expense. So it's basically backing into how many units we have left before we get to that next layer. So we always go in direct order. We don't jump around the layers. We're going from the oldest and working our way to the newest. On March 17th, this is the layer that is part of it's going to be expensed and part of it is going to be an ending inventory. We know we didn't sell all 165 of these units because we only need 148 more units to calculate cost of goods sold. So 148 of those units are going to be expensed as cost of goods sold. And 165 minus 148, how many units are left?
17.
17. So I did change the color on purpose because what are those 17 considered? Part of the ending inventory balance. It's what's left over. So we'll get to that in a second. So right now you're going to put March 17th. This is your last layer. 148 units are going to be expensed at a cost of $20 per unit. So you have to do the calculation here. What's 148 units times $20 per unit?
900.
2009.
906.
Oh, so
Yeah,
960.
2009.60, correct. So FIFO cost of goods sold is what we just calculated.
I
And
have a really quick question.
yeah,
Why is it 148 and not 165?
because we only expense the number of units sold. So right now, this is what I'm going to show you, why the 148, not the 165. Add up 75 plus 95 plus 148. How many units does that total?
318.
Yep. 318 units were sold. So if we had sold more than that, 17 additional units, right, we would have expensed the 165, the whole layer. But since we only sold 318 units, we only need to expense 148 of those units. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
Part
we
of
don't do the March 23rd one at all then?
Not at all, not for cost of goods sold. So you're going layer by layer until you reach the number of units sold. You don't go and bounce around down. You don't go out of order. You always go in the same order that it is, the oldest to the newest for FIFO, cost of goods sold. When you calculate cost of goods sold, remember that because prices are rising, we're in an inflationary period here, FIFO is going to have the lowest cost of goods sold because it's expensing the cheapest items first. So it's going to have a lower cost of goods sold than average cost. And we know that that was 5,970. How much is cost of goods sold under FIFO?
$5,870.
Correct. 5,870. Now, the price or the cost basis per unit doesn't fluctuate very much for this particular example, but think about it, if that was like 16 and then the highest was $160 per unit, that would be a huge range and you would have a much drastic, much larger difference. Sorry, my language skills are completely gone right now. So you have to, for FIFO and LIFO, do this little backing into kind of calculation when you get to the layer, the last layer that you're going to expense. For ending inventory, it's somewhat easy. As long as you've only expensed the number of units sold, you know exactly what's left over. Everything that I have a little check mark next to, I've already expensed, so it's not left over. So for FIFO ending inventory, I like to go the opposite direction, and we start with the newest items because we know that those are still here. We didn't expense them. So March 23rd, we absolutely had 63 units on hand. And
36.
yep, we had more than that. So we take that entire layer and include it in the ending inventory count.
March 23rd.
So for FIFO ending inventory, we actually start from the bottom. I'm just gonna erase this. So ending inventory 36. Did we have more than 36 units in ending inventory?
$53.
53 total, right? So we have the 36, and then we know that from March 17th, we still have 17 units that we didn't sell, at a cost basis of $20 per unit. So for that layer, March 17th, how much is left over?
357.
Check again.
Okay.
So we have to put the ending
Oh.
inventory, like whatever the difference is,
340.
Yeah.
not in the first FIFO cogs and the bottom, like after we keep going through the list.
I like to put it this direction. It's more helpful for me, but some people like to just continue it on. The reason why I don't necessarily like the continuing on method is that you can kind of sometimes get confused right here where you break it up.
Yeah, I see that.
So that's why I usually go the opposite direction, just so it just stands out in your mind as to why it is. For this one, the way that you're double checking, right, is do you have the exact number of units on hand at period end? So units in ending inventory should equal 53. When you add 36 plus 17, does that equal 53 units?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just a little check for you. And then as long as you're going the right directionality for cost of goods sold, you know that you have it correct for ending inventory. And when we add these up, 756 plus 340, FIFO is going to provide us with the highest ending inventory calculation available because it's the newest items and it's an inflationary period. So 756 plus 340 gives us ending inventory of what?
1096.
Correct, 1,096. So FIFO ending inventory is almost $1,000 higher, or roughly $1,000 higher than average cost ending inventory. Notice that 53 units. So that 53 units here, 53 units here, right? Same number of units on hand in ending inventory. And then the same number of units are expensed as cost of goods sold under both of those methods. The values are different because of how we calculate cost of goods sold and ending inventory. Does this make a lot more sense than what you read it in the chapter? I know this method, or the like FIFO and LIFO in particular, are usually really tricky when you're reading about it.
Yeah, it makes more sense.
Okay, good. Thanks, Alex. For LIFO, if you understand FIFO, it's the exact opposite. So last in, first out is how we account for cost of goods sold. So we're assuming from an accounting perspective that the newest items that we purchase are the first ones that we're going to sell. So we're going to expense those newest items first and work our way backwards towards the oldest items. So I'm just going to do one thing. I'm just going to erase all my check marks over here. For LIFO cost of goods sold, we're going to need that same table. So write down date, number of units for column A, cost per unit for column B, and then that total cost column for the last column. For LIFO cost of goods sold, we're going to start from the bottom and work our way back up. Okay. Did we sell at least 36 units? Yes, we know that we sold 318. So yeah, that's an easy one. So all of March 23rd is expensed first. So that most expensive layer, because we're in an inflationary period, is expensed first under LIFO. So all 756 is expensed. Imagine if we had a huge we purchased it period end. Thank you, Carla. I see little signals. So 1 second. Give me a second. Thank you, guys. Turn it off. Is it better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay. I might have to sit in my child's room for the rest of it. I'll just sit. Just give me a second. Sorry. Ignore my. What was that?
Thank you for going out of your way for us.
I'm just teaching you guys. That's all. Hopefully it gets better. Is it better? I think the rain is killing us today. Okay. So for LIFO, we know that we sold at least 36, right? So we expense that first layer. I don't even really need to do a calculation at the next layer because 165 plus 36 is going to be far below the 318, correct?
Yes.
So all of March 17th is expensed under LIFO. So March 17th, 165 units at $20 per unit are expensed. 3,300 right there is just expensed. That's a huge layer for LIFO. And you can do the little calculation now, right? 36 plus 165. And I'm going to rely on you guys to give me that calculation.
201.
Yeah. So 201 units. Is it cutting out again? Oh, thank you. Okay, so 201, we're going to subtract that from 318 units sold, right? Need a pillow. Wait a second. And this is going to give me how many units I still need to expense, right? So 117 units left to expense. So if I look up to March 3rd, right, 95 units. So I know I'm going to expense that entire layer. The other check is if I look at beginning inventory, there's 75 units in that. And I know that I'm only going to have an ending inventory that has 53 units in it. So I know that I'm going to expense this entire next layer. So March 3rd, the entire thing, 95 units at $18 per unit is expensed. So 1,710 is expensed. Now I'm at that last point, right? You can do this. Now I'm going to subtract an additional 95 units. So how many units do I have left to expense?
22.
22 units left to expense. So we're going to dip into that beginning inventory. This is called LIFO liquidation. Remember how I said that? When they dip into the beginning inventory, they don't like to do that because now their cost of goods sold kind of dips a little bit lower because there's a difference in the price between the newest layers and the oldest layers typically. So 22 units are going to be expensed. How many units are left over? 53 units. So beginning inventory, you're going to expense 22 units at $16 per unit. And how much from this layer is going to be expensed?
352.
352, correct. So how do I double check that I've expensed the correct number of units? What do I want to do here? The bottom? Add up these units. So 36 plus 165 plus 95 plus 22 needs to equal the number,
380.
yeah, 318, number of units sold. 318 units were sold, so that's how many we expensed exactly. The total cost for cost of goods sold under LIFO is going to be the highest because we're expensing the newest items first and the prices were rising. So under LIFO, cost of goods sold becomes
6,118.
6,118. So just as a little check for yourself, just to make sure that you kind of, it's a reasonableness test, if you will, right? I'll change the,
Okay.
that. So 5,972 is the middle point, right? The average cost for cost of goods sold. 5,972 is higher than FIFO's 5,870. FIFO has the lowest. Cost of goods sold amount. Average cost has the middle. And then the highest cost of goods sold available is always going to be LIFO when prices are rising. Right? So is 6,118 higher than 5,972?
Yep.
Yeah. For LIFO, is ending inventory pretty easy for this one? We are left with only the oldest inventory. For LIFO ending inventory, we're going to start from the top and then work our way down, the opposite. So you're only going to have one layer for this example. How many units do we have left over to expense?
53.
53. So beginning inventory, we're starting from the top this time. 53 units of that layer are left over at $16 per unit. So under LIFO, what's my ending inventory balance?
848.
848. And that's the lowest possible because it's the oldest inventory there. Okay. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Do you guys have any questions on these? Because the rest of the class today, I want you to do a practice problem. Because I think that the practice problem with this one and practicing the 4 methods is going to be helpful for you. And then you can ask questions while I'm still here and available. And we can kind of go through the practice problem together as a class. So I did send an email, or sorry, I did send an attachment with today's Zoom link. Did everybody see that? Chapter 6 worksheet or chapter 6 handout?
What was it?
I sent an attachment with the Zoom link today. So I want you to pull that up and I'll have it here on the screen. But we're going to go through this example together. Or sorry, not together, but I want you to practice it for a little bit and then we'll go over it. And then you can also ask questions of me while I'm here. The formatting is a little bit off right now. I have to go get my keyboard. So it's on page 6-3, or sorry, yeah, 6-3 of the handout. And it's the in-class example. Go see it. So your homework problems, as well as your exam problem for this chapter, is going to look similar in setup to this one. So I really want you to practice it. Does everybody see it?
Is this chapter 5?
This is chapter 6. So with this example, you're given the inventory records for the year for this company, Draper Sales, right? They've given you the cost per unit and they've given you the number of units. And you're going to want to read the paragraph below down here first. And then you're going to calculate cost of goods sold and ending inventory under FIFO, LIFO, average cost, as well as specific unit cost. Take a few minutes and try to do that one. Even though we didn't go over an example, but I'll go through it in detail after. But I want you all to practice it and ask questions as if I was in class right there with you and walking around and helping you, okay? Think about what we had to do for the example that we just went through. Thanks, Anthony. show your video, you guys. You don't have to, but I wish I could see you. Hi, Dorian. For these ones, I always recommend that you start with the one that you know the most, the easiest one for you, because then you start feeling a little bit more confident with it. You're all so quiet today.
Blame it on the Monday.
Okay, I'll be right back. I just have to run to get something from my other room. Okay. I think there's a way you can raise your hand. Anybody having trouble getting started?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I got the average cost per unit, which I think is 26.5.
Yeah.
So how do I get the cost of goods sold?
So remember, under each method, cost of goods sold is the number of units sold times the average cost that you're calculating.
Yes.
I'm not confirming if the 25,
26.5.
I'm not going to confirm that that's correct.
Okay.
Wrong.
I'm not going to go over it yet because I want all of you guys to try it. It's okay if it's not correct. It's okay if it is correct. I just don't want to say if it is or not. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Anthony, sorry, I just saw yours. The first thing that you should do for all the methods is up at the top. They didn't give you part of the information. They gave you the cost per unit and the number of units, but they didn't give you the total cost. So that's the very first thing that you should figure out. And then using the information here, figure out how many units are sold and how many units are in ending inventory. That's your starting point.
Are the numbers really like big numbers?
Correct. They're much larger numbers than we used before.
Is the average cost per unit, sorry, I got it wrong the first time, higher than 30?
Yes. Do you guys want another like 5 minutes or so?
Yes, please.
Practice virtually is not as easy as online or as on class, in the classroom, sorry. Sorry. Oh.
Professor Wade,
Yeah.
when calculating the LIFO, like units remaining in inventory, do you also do that from last date to first date?
So LIFO ending inventory is what's left over. So yeah, it's the oldest items left. Are you saying how you write it?
Yes.
You can write it. I know some people continue on from the date that they stopped at with cost of goods sold, or you can do it the opposite like I did it. So I usually go it from the opposite direction that it's coming from for cost of goods sold. Either one works. I believe in the homework system, it's just having you put the total amount. So it doesn't have you do the steps that you got to get that number. So it doesn't really matter which direction you choose for that. But for cost of goods sold, it's always start with the one that I do first. You guys gonna be ready in about a minute or so? Okay.
Yes.
Just let me know if you need more time.
No.
Okay. Thanks, Alex. Santiago, stay on at the end of the class and I'll answer your questions. Okay, you guys ready? Yes. Okay. So, very first thing that you had to do was you needed to figure out that total cost, right? For each layer. And double check your work when you're doing this just to make sure you have the right calculation, or even using Excel for this chapter would be really good for your homework, just to double check your calculations. So we're going to take that $30 per unit. Columns are slightly backwards from what I showed you, but it's still the same information. $30 per unit times 600 units. So in the beginning inventory, your value of beginning inventory was 18,000. And then for March 6th, $32 per unit times 1,400 units gives you a value of 44,800. For June 1st, $34 per unit times $1,000 units, $34,000 is the value of that June 1st layer. And then the newest inventory items that they have are 500 units at $36 per unit. So that value is worth 18,000. Right? What are those 3,500 units? What does this stand for?
A total of what you have.
Yeah.
For the year.
So the number of units available. So this is what they had available during that year. Does it mean that they sold them all?
No, they sold 2,500 units.
Yeah. So before we get into that, so they definitely did sell 2,500 units. Sort of given right here. What are we going to do first before we get to that? We're going to calculate cost of.
Average cost per unit?
Nope. That's only for the average cost method. You can do it now,
Okay.
but you're going to calculate cost of goods available. Right? Which was your beginning balance of inventory in cost plus the purchases of inventory, the cost of those purchases. And you need the totals. So I've seen in class students have added up the 30, 32, 34, 36, and then tried to calculate the average that way. And it's not going to come out correct because you need a weighted average. So it depends on the number of units that you have in each of those layers. So you have to calculate out this cost of goods available. So how much is cost of goods available?
114,800.
114,800. So during the year, they had $114,800 worth of inventory available to be sold during the period. We didn't sell all of the units that were available, so we know that we're still going to have some of that cost of goods available left in ending inventory. So this is where that 2,500 units sold comes in. They will always give you either the number of units sold or the number of units in ending inventory. What was that?
Sorry.
What was your question? Did you have one or no?
No.
Okay. So in this case, we take 3,500 units available. We subtract out how many units we sold, 2,500 units sold. And that's going to give us 1,000 units, right? What?
Inventory.
In ending inventory. So 1,000 units are going to be on hand at the end of the year. So for this part, did you guys get all of these numbers correct at this point?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Why do I want you to double check all of these numbers?
Because it'll mess everything up if you have a wrong.
Exactly. If you calculated the wrong number of units in ending inventory, it will mess you up. If you calculated the total cost wrong, it will mess you up. It's just a good check to have. If I gave you the number of units in ending inventory, what do you have to back into? Number of units sold.
Units sold.
And you do the same calculation. You would just subtract it from number of units available. So practice a couple different problems that have you do it calculate different things, okay? Do you want me to start with specific unit costs because we didn't do that one last class?
You can start with that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the only method that they're going to give you the exact units that are either sold or the exact units that are on hand at period end. So they're going to specify from what layer those units are still on hand or that were sold. And then the rest of them are what you're going to expense or keep on hand. It's the opposite. So in this case, assume that 200 units in the ending inventory were from November 30th purchase. And the remainder was from the June 1st purchase. So what information did they give us? Did they give us the number of units that were sold, or did they give us the specific units that were left over? And then
What was left over?
left over. So you're going to calculate ending inventory first. So they're saying that assume that 200 units in the ending inventory were from the November 30th purchase. So 200 of those 500 units. So November 30th. And I'm just going to do it number of units first. 200 units are still left over. And the cost per unit for November 30th is $36 per cost. So $36 per unit rather. So with the specific unit cost, we're saying these specific units are what's still left over. So we need that cost basis for those specific units to calculate ending inventory. So for this layer of it, and I'm saying layer just because they gave you two different dates. What's 200 units times $36 per unit?
7,200.
7,200, yep. So we took care of that one. The remainder was from the June 1st purchase. So they didn't tell us the total number, but what do we know? How many units?
Leftover 1,000 minus 200 is 800 units from June 1st times 34.
Yep. So we know that 1,000 units are on hand. So in ending inventory, because we calculated it up here, right? So we take 1,000 minus 200 and back into 800 units from the June 1st purchase. So 800 of those 1,000 come from June 1st. And June 1st had a cost basis of $34 per unit. And we're going to have an ending inventory, $27,200 of that layer's inventory. And then we're going to add this up, 7,200 plus 27,200 to get 34,400,
400.
correct, in ending inventory for specific unit cost. So for cost of goods sold, technically you can just back into it by taking cost of goods available minus ending inventory, what you calculated. But if you made an error in this calculation, then you're not going to calculate cost of goods sold correctly. So I'll show you the way to do it for the remaining. So cost of goods sold. So which two layers were impacted already? June 1st, right?
November 30.
Yeah. June 1st, 800 were expensed. So 200 was left over. November 30th, 200 were expensed. So 300 are left over. Beginning inventory and March 6th weren't impacted because we didn't have any leftovers. So it's assumed that we expensed them all. We sold them all. So you can just copy down beginning inventory and 600 units, $30 per unit were expensed and sold. So 18,000 is expensed. And then March 6th, the entire layer was sold 1,400 units, $32 per unit cost. So 44,800 is expensed. For June 1st, you sold 800 of those units. So 200 of those 1,000 units were left over. And expensed $34 per unit. So for this one, how much am I going to expense?
6,800.
6,800. For November 30th, 200 were left in ending inventory, what we used over here. And 300 units were sold from that layer at $36 per unit as a cost basis. So for that last layer, 10,800 is what's going to be expensed. And you can just double check this number of units sold, right? When I add these up, does it equal 2,500 units sold?
I have a quick question. I'm having a hard time seeing where the 300 came from.
300? So
Yeah.
for November 30th, you have 500 total units. And November 30th, it told you that 200 of those units were sold. So 500 minus 200.
Oh,
gives
okay.
100.
And then also for your ending inventory for like November 30th, you said that the 200 units were sold for $36 a unit, and then over here, I think
Cost. So if you do November 30th,
yeah, I'm kind of confused.
it's the same cost. The cost basis is here. You see that?
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Then the June 1st is a 34. So for specific unit cost, what's your cost of goods sold?
80,400.
80,400. Okay, that's the only one that they're going to tell you exact units. after you do that specific unit cost one, ignore that information. Does that make sense? Smiley smile. That's okay? You guys have been doing specific unit costs since the beginning of this class, whenever we've dealt with inventory. So don't get confused on the homework when you're doing it. Okay? Are you ready to move on? Okay, thank you. So, yes, if you want a good fraud video to watch, Hulu is offering free HBO if you have a subscription, and McMillions is amazing. Somebody in this class told me about it before he left. That thing is crazy.
Yeah, the Monopoly fraud.
Yeah, holy moly. And they're still doing Monopoly, and I don't know. They said they have better security around it, but I feel like it could happen again, but just with a different group of people. That was crazy. Good short series if you want to watch it. Sorry, had to do a little shout out for that one. Smile, everyone. I can't see.
She was married to the guy. I can't believe she's not in jail for like ever.
Yeah, well,
On the couch.
so a lot changed after 2001 in terms of fraud, and the jail sentence that you get related to fraud is a lot different now. For going back to inventory, fraud's always interesting. There's great videos on there. There's some good documentaries that I found. If you're bored and want some good accounting type, business related videos to watch. Okay. For FIFO, do you want to do FIFO, average cost, or LIFO next?
FIFO.
FIFO?
FIFO.
Okay. Sorry. Where are we going to start? Where am I going to start? Because I'm going to do cost of goods sold first. Where am I going to start? Which direction for FIFO?
At the
Beginning
top.
inventory.
Yep, top.
Oh.
So FIFO cost of goods sold, we're starting at that top part. How many units total did we sell?
2,500.
2,500. So we're going to do the table again. We have the date, right? Number of units, cost per unit, and then total cost. So for the date, we're going to start with beginning inventory first, obviously. Did we sell at least 600 units? Yes. The 600 units, all of that layer is expensed at $30 per unit. So 18,000 is immediately expensed.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it 1,000 units? Because don't we like do 3,500 subtracted to 2,500 and then you get 1,000?
2,500 units are sold. They gave us that. Units sold.
Okay.
So what's left over is ending inventory.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. And for all of the methods, except for specific unit costs, because specific unit cost, it depends on what they give you. For the other three methods, you're going to calculate cost of goods sold first, regardless of what number they gave us first. For the next layer, March 6th, did I sell an additional 1,400 units?
Yes.
Yes. at 32 per unit. So that entire layer, 44,800 is expensed. And what I'll write next, you don't have to write, but I'm just going to do the little check here, right? 2,000 units have been accounted for at this point, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So how many additional units do I need?
500.
500, correct. Yep. Correct. So we are only using 1,000 units left for FIFO for all of them. So I really like this example because look here, the next layer has 1,000, right? Because we've already expensed these 2 layers here, the beginning inventory and then March 6th. The next layer has 1,000, and some people jump down to November 30th because they see 500. Just because it's exactly the number that you need, it doesn't mean you're just going to do that. That would be out of order. FIFO is first in, first out. So we're breaking up June 1st. I don't care that the next layer has exactly what I need. I'm going to take in the order that it's described, first in, first out, the next
I have
layer.
a question.
Yes.
So if the price, if the cost per unit is the same as in June 1st and November 30, we can still get, for example, only November 30, 500.
Correct. But it's not going to be like that. Yeah. Usually there is a difference, even a insignificant amount. So 500 from June 1st are going to be expensed. So there's our 2,500 units sold at $34 per unit. And how much of that 34,000 is expensed?
17,000.
Yeah, half of it, 17,000. So under FIFO, cost of goods sold is what?
$63,600.
Try again. Sorry, double check it. So this is 35. The 18 plus the 17 is 35 plus the 44.
79,800.
Yeah, 79,800. Are you finding that you're doing it faster now?
Yes.
It's a lot quicker now that you're kind of understanding it, right? The more times you practice it, the easier these methods are going to get. And writing out those steps is going to help you for the test. Because remember, you get those notes with you. Okay. So for FIFO, we're left over with November 30th and then part of June 1st, right? So for ending inventory, I'll just start from the bottom. And November 30th, 500 units are still on hand at the highest cost, $36 per unit. So 18,000 from November 30th is going to be sitting in ending inventory. And then moving my way back up, I still have 500 units from June 1st left over. At $34 per unit, and $17,000 of that layer is still sitting in ending inventory. So 1,000 units are on hand at year end, and the cost of those units, so ending inventory balance for FIFO
35,000.
35,000. And with both of those methods, if I added the 80,400 plus the 34,400, it's going to equal the 114,800. If I add cost of goods sold plus the ending inventory balance for FIFO, it's going to equal cost of goods available. All of them will do that except for sometimes average cost because of the rounding. Questions on either of those two? You want me to go a little bit faster? Or are you okay?
This is a good pace.
Okay. For LIFO, where am I going to start?
On the bottom.
From the bottom. So did we sell at least 500 units?
Yes.
Yes. So November 30th, 500 units are expensed at $36 per unit. So that entire layer of 18,000 is expensed. Did we sell at least 1,000 more units?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. So 1,000 units, all of June 1st is expensed. 1,000 units, $34 per unit, and $34,000 is expensed. For March 6th. Now, right now, how many units have we expensed here?
1,500.
1,500, right? So how many total units do I need to get to?
2,500.
2,500 total units are sold, right? So if I go to the next layer, I already have 1,500 accounted for. If I added 1,400 to that, I would have overexpensed it, correct?
Yes.
I only need how many from this layer?
1,000.
1,000. So what does that mean for the remaining units? 400 are in ending inventory, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to leave those 400. I'm just going to take the 1,000 from March 6th. And just to double check, 500 plus 1,000 plus 1,000 does give you 2,500 units sold. And from this layer, it costs $32 per unit. So $32,000 from that layer is expensed as cost of goods sold under LIFO. How much are those 2,500 units expensed at? What's the total?
84,000.
84,000. So just as a kind of reality check, is 84,000 higher than 79,800?
Yes.
Yes, it should be higher because LIFO is going to have the highest cost of goods sold when costs are rising, which they are here. And then what's left over for LIFO is going to be the oldest layers. Well, all of the oldest layer and then a portion of the second oldest layer. So ending inventory LIFO, I'm going to start from the top. Beginning inventory, we have 600 units left at $30 per unit. So we have 18,000 in ending inventory from that layer. How many additional units do we have?
400.
Yep. 1,000 units are in ending inventory, right? So we have 400 left, 1,000 minus 600. So from March 6th, because we go in exact order, and look at that, 400 are left over from that layer. 400 units at $32 per unit. So from that March 6th layer, what's the total amount that's left over in ending inventory? $12,800,
12,800.
correct. And then under LIFO, what is my ending inventory balance? What is the value of those 1,000 units I have left over?
30,800.
30,800. So LIFO is going to have the lowest value of ending inventory. FIFO is going to have the highest, right? And that is the case here. We may have a visitor. Because I need to borrow your room for a minute, baby. Hi, baby. Okay. Or FIFO and LIFO, how are you guys doing?
That makes sense.
Okay. Did you make any mistakes that you want to ask about? It's okay to make mistakes. Remember, this is how you're learning from them.
The only mistake I think I had issue with was like the 1,000 units in ending inventory. I thought that we were basing that instead of the 2,500. That was like the main one.
For the expense?
Yeah, for like, you know how at the bottom they're like, that's what they're like for FIFO cost of goods sold, it's like 2,500.
Yes.
I was confused, and then now I realize that that's for the ending inventory for the 1,000. So
yeah, and that's usually, if I'm looking at somebody's homework problem with a question, it's usually that. It's either that you've skipped a layer for FIFO or LIFO when you're calculating either ending inventory or cost of goods sold. But the other mistake that I see often is that you're doing it backwards, where you're using the ending inventory, the total number of units for ending inventory, as cost of goods sold, number of units to sell. So that's a common mistake to just kind of double check yourself on.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, last one. Then you guys are done for the day, if that makes you happy. Yes, smile.
Average cost. I got 32.8.
Yeah, that is correct. So we're going to calculate the average cost per unit first. Equals cost of goods available divided by the number of units available. Right? So we're saying this is how many units we had total available during the period. This is the total cost based on that unit cost, or the number of units we purchased times that cost per unit. So this is going to be our average that we're calculating for those units that we had available during the period. So you're going to take your 114,800 cost of goods available that we calculated above, divided by 3,000 500 units available during that period. So every year your average cost is going to change because you're going to calculate this every period, the average. So 114,800 divided by 3,500 units available gives you an average cost of $32.80 per unit. So if you were taking this test on campus, I would tell you to round to the nearest penny, and usually that's how they're requesting you to do it in the homework system, but make sure that you round each number to the point that they're telling you to. For number 2, or part 2, you're calculating cost of goods sold and ending inventory based on that average cost that you calculated, right? So cost of goods sold is the number of units sold times the average cost per unit you calculated above. So we sold 2,500 units, the same as we expensed under LIFO, FIFO, and then, sorry, over here, specific unit cost. Now we're just going to put it times $32.80 per unit, which is in between the range of $30 per unit and $36 per unit. So I know that that's correct.
82,000.
And 82,000 would be my cost of goods sold that I calculate. And the 82,000 is between FIFO's 79,800 cost of goods sold and LIFO's 84,000, which it should be. And for ending inventory, we're going to take number of units in ending inventory, what's left over, times the average cost per unit. So the 32.80 per unit again, times 1,000 units in ending inventory.
$32,800.
32,800. Okay, which should be between FIFO and LIFO. Again, it is. It's in the middle. Okay. Questions for me? How do you feel about chapter 6? That's it for chapter 6. And
It's
your homework,
understandable. It's pretty.
yeah, it's easier than chapter 5, right?
Yeah, that's true.
After you go through this practice and you understand these ones, I know these ones are pretty difficult when you first are reading about them. I'll post a wrap that I usually show you guys. I'll post it in the class Canvas so you can watch it. It's pretty cute. It's from somebody else's student that was doing an extra credit project. And basically they talk about FIFO and LIFO. I think it's funny how he does it. So you might enjoy it. Yes?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? So on Wednesday, ask your question if you have it right now, but on Wednesday, we'll go through the study guide and I'll upload the recording hopefully by tonight or tomorrow. Chris? For the study guide, I already posted the questions that you'll have in the test in the Canvas. I think it's on the exam page for you. I'll copy and paste it and then post it in the announcement too for Wednesday. But you already have the extra credit assignment available to you, so you can start working on that for some of the problems. We'll go through the problems on Wednesday from the study guide. So bring questions. And I'm thinking about making your exam due not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. So then you have a little bit extra time to study. Would that make you feel better?
Yeah, that would. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Yeah, no problem. Just easing any tension or stress that could come to mind. For that, what will happen is I'll start chapter 7 before you take the exam, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay.
Okay.
Will we
So
have
next-
a review session as well, like before the exam?
Oh yeah, that'll be Wednesday. So we'll have the review session this Wednesday. So then you'll have over a week to study.
Okay.
And so with the exam, it'll be available, and it is available already. You can take the first attempt whenever you want to. You don't have to take both attempts. It's just available to you. And I increased the time that you have, and you have 5 hours total to do it because you have for each session. Because once you log in, you have to complete it.
Okay.
So
Are the
what was
are
that?
the attempts averaged, or is it just the highest attempt? Okay.
The highest of the two. So if you're fine with your score from the first attempt, you don't have to do the second attempt.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm just setting it due is next Saturday. I want you to hopefully do it by next Saturday because I don't want you to get behind. But stuff is happening right now. We don't know what's going on. And if your family gets sick, you get sick, or if you have to work, I get it. So just email me and let me know if you don't think you're going to finish it by the due date, okay?
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for your messages in chat. I appreciate that. Do you guys have any other questions for chapter 6 or for me?
Thank you.
Okay. If you had questions, because I know a few of you I sent messages in chat, just stay on at the end of class for me, please. So everybody else, you guys are good. I'll see you Wednesday. Have a good day today or tomorrow, and start your chapter 6 homework.
You too.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye. Yes, Kim Daney, the chapters on the exam are 4 to 6. And Isabella, it's chapters 4, 5, 6. Alex, thank you. That's perfect. Let's see. Okay. Isabella, do you have any questions? Santiago, I know you had a question for me. Can you unmute yourself? Or you can type it too if you want to. Oh, perfect. Okay. I'm going to unmute you really fast. Okay. What was your question exactly, Santiago? Was it in regards to spring classes? Okay, I can't hear you. Wait 1 second. Check your volume. It might be that. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's just, I don't even know. Sometimes check the audio to see if when you're talking, the little volume goes up. Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can. Sorry.
All right.
Sometimes it just doesn't work. Okay. Let me see. Everybody else. So what was your question?
How can I pay now my classes?
Oh, wait 1 second. I'm just gonna do this.